All right, awesome. We are recording, Mr. Sam. My phone is on airplane mode, so I'm good there.
All right.
All right. I'm Jay Culbert, and I'm here today with Sam Sacks of Dur-A-Flex. Many of us in the industry as contractors refer to him as Dr. Flex. Sam, very glad to have you, and thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, Jay, it's great to be here, and I've been watching you over the last couple of months doing your segments, you and Doug and Jim. So yeah, it's great to be a part of it, and yeah, let's get into it. What do you want to talk about?
Sounds good, man. So we're talking about mainly like facility managers and owners today, and the questions they commonly have. They come to you, they come to me with a lot of common questions. And one of them that comes up is performance versus aesthetics. You know, can they have both?
Sure. No, it's a good question, and I think today you can't do one without the other. Everyone wants it all. So you need to provide a durable floor that's aesthetically pleasing for the customer and his environment. So it's one, to me, it's one and the same. And with the Dur-A-Flex flooring systems, that's what we try to provide on every project.
Got it. So, I mean, they're spending a ton of money on the floor. Why not? Obviously, you need the performance, but have it look good as well.
It's you have to do it because their customers are coming into their facility. Maybe it's someone they're making a product for, and they're inspecting them to make sure it's an ISO 9000 type environment, and it's got to be a Six Sigma or lean manufacturing. It's got to be a really clean space. So it's got to look good, and it has to perform, and that's what our systems deliver.
Awesome, perfect. Yeah, the second question that comes up a lot, Sam, is you know, how do we minimize downtime to our production? You know, some companies are losing up to $250,000 if they shut down a line for an hour. So, you know, how do they minimize that?
Well, that's a great question, and that's all the more reason to do it once and do it right. Do the correct flooring system, and don't do a short-term, you know, a thin epoxy coating application when you haven't done the proper testing to make sure. Well, you want to do the proper testing, to test for moisture and soluble salts in the concrete. So the system that we put down is the proper system, and it's only done once. And there's additives we can put into the cementitious urethane base coat that can speed up the cure. And we have optional top coats that can be MMA, methyl methacrylate, or our Accelera, which is 100% solid urethane polymer, that are quick curing resins that cure anywhere from MMA is 30 minutes to the Accelera can be a 2 to 3 hour cure in between steps. So floors can be put into production very fast compared to the old use epoxy from the bottom, from primer to top coat. So we can turn systems around very fast, and some systems have no odor, some systems have slight odor. With MMA, we need to ventilate to control the air for curing, and but it's got an unbelievable performance. So there's a resin for each environment that's the correct thing to use.
That's fantastic. So that applies. I mean, some pharmaceutical, bio, life science. Could you shut down in the afternoon and actually get an operation back up in the morning?
That's pretty close to doing that, depending on what surface preparation and the size of the room. If you're tackling a room that was 300 or 400 square feet, yeah, you could definitely do that. But if it's a couple thousand square feet, a day and a half, 2 days, you know, it depends on, do we have to trowel cove base? Are we doing it with decorative quartz or flake? But we've turned projects around in a day and a half, and especially if you have 2 crews, you might have a preparation crew that comes in, that does the first part, and then after 6 or 8 hours, they're out of there, and then the guys that are laying the floor come in and start, and they're working around the clock. So you can tackle it in a few different ways depending on how much downtime you have to do.
That's perfect. Awesome. So you kind of touched on this third question already, but a lot of times we're asked, well, what is the best long-term solution? Again, they want to buy a floor, they spend a lot of money on this floor, they set up their operation, whether it's a brewery or a life science lab. How do they choose the best long-term solution for their business?
Well, I look at it as, what's the ROI on that room, the equipment they're putting in the room. If they're not planning to move that equipment, and it's a 3-year return on investment for the equipment, well, they certainly don't want to be getting in there. They want to keep that machine running. So for them to make their investment pay off, they need to produce product. So any interruption in that is a huge negative in their business. So the last thing they can have is a floor failure they have to shut down production to do a repair. So put the right system in the start, and the overall cost of renovating that space, the floor is a small part of it, but it's an integral part. And especially if we're talking about biotech and pharmaceutical today, you can't take a chance and have a flooring failure where you'd have bacteria or poor indoor air quality or something that could shut down them from making their product. Think about these vaccines that are being made. If all of a sudden they can't make a batch, or a batch is bad because of something happening with the floor in the area, huge money. So it really becomes, it's a no-brainer to put the right system in and take that out of the equation. Plenty of other things to worry about besides the having a flooring failure.
Absolutely. Good. Very enlightening. So I can't imagine the scenarios you've been faced with and the failures or the disasters. Like, how do we avoid things like that? And can you share, like, say, Jay, this is the worst thing I ever saw happen, and I could have changed it. They could have done something different. What comes up?
Well, a lot of times it's people simply did not test. They did not test for moisture or soluble salts, and it's always an existing facility. I had a job, had to be about 10 years ago, high tech, clean. It's never in a manufacturing facility where they're not making a really high end product. It's always in a product where there's $20 million worth of high tech equipment, clean room space that's going in where you have the problem.
Right.
This was they had an old VCT floor that was there, vinyl composition tile, and they had a demo contractor that had scraped it up long before the flooring contractor who was doing the job came in there to do it. And he just assumed it was gone. So he didn't see any signs. The existing floor had a lot of signs of osmotic blistering and moisture failure. The tiles were all cupped up, and you would have walked in, and if the tile was on it, he saw it, he would have said, wow, we have to do some testing on this concrete. And he bid it to a general contractor, and all that was done. The cleanup was the demo was done in advance. So the end of the story is he put the floor in without doing any core testing for soluble salts. It was a 10,000 square foot room, and it ended up blistering in 12-inch squares, the outline of where the salts blistered around where the tiles were. So the floor took on, in 6 months, it looked like it had a tile pattern on it because the salt were high, came up through the finished floor. And so what had to happen? Thankfully, they had not moved the equipment into the room yet. They were just about to do it. They were validating the clean room. They had to tape everything off, scarify up the floor, remove the elevated soluble salts, put in a cementitious urethane base coat, polycrete material, the floor. Oh, and the last thing I forgot to tell you, it was an ESD floor, static dissipated epoxy, which is one of the most expensive systems out there. Had in on top of that. And they already had HEPA filters in the ceiling and everything. So it was like that's like the biggest nightmare. And if they would have done testing in advance up front, they would have they would have known that. And with some information too, that look, if the general contractor owner would have disclosed some of that information to the subcontractor,
Sure.
let them know about what the conditions were they were coming into. They thought they were doing themselves a favor by taking it up in advance, but they really didn't. So kind of a long and around story, but that was a bad one.
Horrible. It sounds like, so if they tested, and it sounds like if they had walked the site prior to the tile removal, would those be the two things that would have?
If they would have done an area site survey, they would have seen it, and you would have done the testing. And like, no one's got the time, or no one wants to spend charge $225 to do the actual ion chromatograph testing at Dur-A-Flex. And we test twice a week and have results the next day. So we have the equipment in-house to turn it around fast for our flooring contractors. Before, people were sending cores out to companies on the West Coast. It was taking over a month to get the results. And we talk about time. No one's got time to wait. So they want results right away, so we can come up with the solution. You can price the solution to them, and they can decide, how they want to handle the floor.
Yep.
So that's just another example. By us having the equipment in-house, we can come up with the right system that needs to be done faster than other companies.
It's great to have that resource, especially locally to us anyway, Sam. That's a really good service you have.
We've done a number of projects that way with Coludis, and it's paid off.
Yeah.
On putting the right system and preventing a failure before the installation.
Yep.
Everyone's a genius after the installation when their floor is blistering and delaminating. Well, you got a moisture and salt problem, but
right.
If someone could tell you beforehand, it's short money and time to do the testing. So why wouldn't you test?
Agreed. If you don't mind, you just touched on some gold, in my opinion, about, I don't know if it was 7-8 years ago, whenever it was, you introduced our company to what we just called an area site survey. And we latched onto that, Sam, but we got that from you. If you don't mind just speaking to that for a moment, because
Sure.
It's so helpful.
Yeah, sure. It's a basic, short 2-page form where we want to know the age of the concrete, what chemicals have been used in the area, how is the customer going to be using the space? Is another system already put on the concrete? How are they going to clean it? Do we need the floor pitched to the drain? Because right now, say it's a food processing facility and they can't get written up, they can't have standing water on their floor. So, are we going to pitch it 1/16, 1/8, 1/4 inch per foot? Well, running water through the drain, it's 1/4 inch per foot. Because you get surface tension on the water on the top of a flooring system. So if someone says, oh, I just want a positive pitch, well, I hope you got a good squeegee, because you're going to need it to push it around. But my whole room doesn't pitch. My whole room pitches, but I just have a puddle in one corner. And a lot of times, if you don't pitch the whole entire room, you move the puddle to the left or to the right of where it was before. So that's an important thing. If the customer is intending to wash their floors down and have everything run to the drain. Power. Do you have the right power to run your surface preparation equipment? The temperature of the space that the floor is going to be done, or the temperature of the spills that are going to hit the floor. Is there going to be thermal shock conditions? And how about some lights so we can see what we're doing? It's not just one light bulb in the corner, right, where you're supposed to do perfect aesthetics for this pharmaceutical company when they get to look at the floor, but you guys got a light on his hard hat. That's all he's got to see in the room.
Right.
It's 45 degrees and the material is flowing like molasses because it's not warm enough to have it level. All important things, and those are on the questionnaire, things to ask the customer to make sure we get the right conditions to make the floor look good.
That's great. We can't thank you enough for that introduction, Sam, because it's done everything you just said. It's a great checklist to keep us out of trouble. And it's a benefit to the owner because they know we're doing what we should be doing. The other thing we found it to be great for is training new employees. It's
Perfect. Yeah.
perfect for that. It's here's everything you need to know about a floor before you do a floor. So
And it even helps guys that have been doing it a long time, because sometimes you're walking, you're surveying, you're looking around, and you get back in your car and you're back at your office. You're like, oh,
you do that, yeah.
that's what are the chemicals they're using on that floor? I want to make sure that I have the right top coat on the floor. So it just makes sure you're asking all the right questions, and that's going to help you make the system recommendation, and that they get the right floor that they need.
Perfect. Sam, you're a great friend of the company and you've been nothing but help to us. We can't thank you enough for being here with us today. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
All right, Sam. Take care. Oh, I don't want to end the meeting. I just want to stop recording. There we go. Stop.